everyone. This is the Suck Less Life podcast. Today I have a special guest. This is Blake Murdock, one of the owners of the Murdock Auto Team. So I would just ask you to introduce yourself, kind of who you are and how you got here to, being a business owner of a very successful auto franchise.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. As you mentioned, my name's Blake Murdock. I am the fourth generation in our family that has owned our auto group. I'm partners with my brother Ben and my cousin Tyson. Prior to us, it was my dad and my uncle, my dad Blake, my uncle Ko, which came from their father, my grandpa, Kent Murdock. And the business actually started in 1925 with Kent's father-in-law, Jack Olson. So Jack bought his...
coming up on 100 years.
Yeah, so Jack bought his first dealership, or partnered in his first dealership in 1925, an Oldsmobile dealership in Morgan, Utah. A few years later acquired the Chevrolet franchise, and from there expanded into Layton, Utah. In 1982, Jack sold the business to his two son-in-laws. One was my grandfather, Kent Murdock, and his other son-in-law, Sam Young. And from there they split and it became Young Chevrolet, and Murdock Chevrolet moved to Bountiful.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a long line of car dealers in our family. And for the last 3 years, as I mentioned, myself, my brother Ben, and my cousin Tyson were the partners in the current version of the Murdock Auto Team with 7 dealerships ranging from Linden, Utah, all the way up to Logan, Utah, and selling and servicing Hyundai, Genesis, Chevrolet, GMC, Cadillac, Buick, and Volkswagen.
It's a lot of car companies.
Yeah, it's good. It's been a lot of fun.
Has the Murdock company always been in the auto industry, or has it ever branched out into other things?
As our family business, it has only publicly been in the auto industry. There's privately held companies and investments, obviously, by the owners throughout the years, but
right.
as far as publicly, just the auto industry. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think what I'd like to talk about is the core values of the company, and kind of the values that you try to instill in all your employees. So there's charity, growth, accountability, and integrity. So I guess we'll just go down that list, starting with charity. I don't think most people's perception of car dealerships and what the values of a car dealership is, I don't think most people are automatically going to think charity. It's kind of funny. I actually have a friend that jokes with me, and just as for you guys, I'm actually one of Blake's employees at one of his dealerships, but he jokes with me that a car salesman would punch a baby for $1. So that's kind of the caricature that he has of car dealerships or salesmen in general. But talk about charity. How did that become a core value, and what do you think? How has that been a benefit just overall? Yeah,
good question. So I think most people, when they hear the word charity, they maybe think of something they give away, that they maybe donate to a charity or a charitable
right.
cause. That's certainly part of it. We love being part of the community here in Utah. We have been the benefactors of incredible people and incredible communities that we serve, and so we want to take every opportunity we can to give back, but that's really not the root of charity as a core value for our organization. The root of it is how we treat one another within the walls of the dealership. That starts with our team members, making sure that when they come to work, they feel loved, they feel appreciated, they know that they're part of something important, something that's bigger than themselves. And we genuinely feel like if we can't express that effectively to the people we work with every single day, it's impossible to do that effectively in the communities that we serve and the people that are coming, the guests and the customers that are coming through our doors every day. So it's really about how we treat people.
Okay, so as a customer, how would that? I guess how does that relate to your everyday customer coming into a dealership to look at cars or to buy a car?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it first relates to our team members when they come to work. If they're happy to be here, if they feel valued and appreciated and feel loved, they're going to naturally want to provide better service to our guests. So how that hopefully translates to our guests is when they come to our dealerships, our motto or our slogan is, when you walk through our doors, you feel like family.
Right.
When you walk into the doors of your home, hopefully the first thing you feel is loved. And that's how we want our customers to feel. We want them to feel loved and appreciated, that they're going to be treated in a way that they don't have any reason to be concerned or have any lack of trust or feel like they can't recommend all of their family and friends to do business with us as well.
Awesome. So the next one is growth. Let's talk a little bit about that one. So obviously, as a business, you want the business to grow. You want your customer base to grow. Growth in a business is ultimately the goal, right? So let's talk a little bit about that one. So how did that one end up being a core value for the company?
Yeah, I think from a business perspective, it's easy to achieve a certain level of success to be comfortable. What we have found is that as soon as we're comfortable is when things start falling apart. And as long as we are striving to continue to challenge ourselves, to grow, to achieve the next milestone or the next benchmark, that fuels us to become better and to stay relevant. And hopefully we're not just relevant, hopefully we're on the forefront of change of the way consumers want to do business in this industry, the way we treat our team members. But growth, from a business standpoint, obviously there's always the desire to improve and expand, whether that's more dealerships or selling more vehicles or servicing more vehicles. That's an important part of it. But similar to charity, it really begins with the individuals. I expect myself to be growing personally. I expect all of our team members to be growing personally. And having that personal growth plan makes it a lot easier for the dealerships and the departments to grow as well.
So it sounds like growth could be looked at as an antidote to complacency.
Yeah.
That makes sense, and definitely being one of your employees, we're definitely pushed to grow and become better and not get to a point to where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
In fact, I think on the posters that you have in the dealership where a lot of the employees are going to be, I think the quote that you have under growth is by Jocko Willink. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
There's no growth in the comfort zone. There's no comfort in the growth zone, or something. I may have got it backwards.
You nailed it. Yeah.
But that's the basic idea, and it's kind of funny. So I believe you served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I did,
and I did as well. And I remember that that was a quote that we would hear all the time. Not necessarily that we attributed it to Jocko, and it's probably not an original idea. It's probably something that's been around for a long time. But as far as maybe stepping away from more of a business standpoint, just having growth as a core value in your personal life, how has that helped you become, I guess, where you are right now, and how do you think having a growth mindset for just everyone listening to the podcast, how that could be beneficial?
Yeah, I think that having a growth mindset has really shaped every bit of success I've achieved, which isn't that much, but understanding that failure is part of the process allows you to continue to strive to be better. I think where people get stuck the most is they think everything has to be perfect, everything just has to be just right, and that growth looks like a steady trajectory upward and forward, when really it's a pretty rocky path, a lot of bumps along the way, and growth really comes from the trials that we experience. It comes from the difficult times. It comes from being challenged, and it comes really from the times that are the most difficult. So,
what would be some experiences that you'd be willing to share, either personal life or as the company has been growing, some of those hardships that have helped make you or the company stronger overall?
Yeah, I'm assuming that your audience may be too young to remember this the way I do, but in the auto industry specifically, in 2008 and 2009, the recession that hit, I remember being the general manager of this Hyundai store, which used to be on State Street in Orem. And, during that time, we were selling about 100 cars a month, and it got down to where we were selling maybe 60 or 70. And we felt lucky if we saw 1 or 2 customers come in the store a day. Mm-hmm. And I would go to sleep at night and have dreams that we would have to lay off every employee, and it was just going to be me and my dad selling and fixing all the cars. And that was terrifying. And I thought for sure it would be a miracle for us to make it through it. And there were a lot of car dealers that closed during those years. A lot of businesses that had to close their doors. But what it forced us to do was really focus on the controllables. And as soon as I learned that I couldn't stress or spend my time worrying about the things that were completely out of my control, but to put my energy and my effort towards the things I could control, I really refined and developed my skill set that helped us grow even during a time that a lot of dealers were going out of business. And we came out of that recession in such an incredible spot. Just 1 year later, we were able to move from State Street in Orem down to Linden, and within a matter of 1 year post-recession, we had doubled our business, and we've continued to grow ever since.
Wow. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into the next core value, which is accountability. You mentioned focusing on the things that you can control, and which I think is great advice. I guess a lot of people, I tend to be the kind of person that gets online and I get very bugged about some of the things that people say, people wanting handouts or the world owes me kind of attitude. So yeah, I think it's great advice to focus on things that you can control. What advice would you give as far as the things that you can't control? I mean, do you ignore it? Do you? Yeah, I guess what do you do there, or with the things that you can't control?
Yeah, some great counsel that I received was to be informed but not obsessed. It's important to know what's happening around you, and although sometimes those things can become agitating and irritating, we live in an incredibly volatile political climate. Mm-hmm. And on either side of the aisle, it's really easy to get fired up pretty quickly.
Right. I hear ya.
But in light of focusing on controllables, I think there's two things. When it comes to relationships with people, I strive to see people the way God sees them. It's very difficult. I don't think I completely comprehend that, mm-hmm. but understand that everybody has value, and everybody has a different life experience that has helped create and form their perspective and their opinions, and it's important to be able to respect that, even though you may not agree with it, but at the same time not allow it to frustrate you or upset you, just recognizing they're trying to do their best just like I'm trying to do my best.
Right.
But being able to focus on the controllables also means that I have the obligation, the right, and the opportunity to stand up for what I believe in.
Right.
And when it comes to controllables, to act in a way that can make a positive impact for me, my family, the people around me, my business, but do it in a way that is also respectful to those that maybe don't see things the way I see them as well.
Yeah. Well, I like the aspect of looking at people as you feel like God would. And I appreciate you bringing kind of a religious viewpoint to this. And in our faith, accountability is kind of a pretty big, I guess, kind of a big deal in what we believe. But what would you say? What does it look like to take, as going back to Jocko Willink, taking extreme accountability? He wrote a whole book on that, and I'm in the middle of listening to that right now. But what does it look like to take extreme accountability?
So accountability to me is similar to integrity, even though the core values for our company represent different things, but they're very intertwined in that to be accountable means that you are going to do what you say you were going to do, and that when you don't, you're willing to accept the consequence and learn and grow from it so that you can become better. As I mentioned before, one of the most, I believe, critical parts of success is failure. But if you look at your failures as an opportunity to blame others or to blame your circumstance or to make excuses, and you're not taking accountability for your actions and for your controllables, you can never grow. You can never improve. You can never get better. You can never improve your situation. And so accountability to me is just looking in the mirror and saying, this is on me. I can't blame anybody else for my circumstances, for my situation, for my position, other than the decisions that I've made. Right. And I have to be willing to live with that.
It's so easy to want to blame. It seems like the natural thing that we want to do. The natural man wants to not be at fault, and it's so easy to blame and to not take accountability. I think that's just the natural thing that we want, as humans to do. I think. As far as blaming, I like to, something that I like to think when I'm in a situation where I want to blame something other than myself for whatever it is I think you can't blame your way to the top, and no one ever has. And I like what you said about failure being part of the process, but obviously you're not going to learn and grow from that failure if you're not taking personal accountability for that.
Yeah.
What would be, I guess, you mentioned kind of the volatile political climate. Just, I guess, to the people watching, what would be your advice to people who haven't necessarily thought too much about accountability, or because in my mind, of these 4 values, this is kind of the biggest one that I feel like I've grown the most in the last few years. But what would be your advice to people to start recognizing maybe when you're not taking personal accountability, and how you can start developing the mindset of taking extreme accountability?
Yeah, I think in any situation where you are assessing where you're at currently and where you want to go, it's easy to say things like, well, if this would have happened to me, or if I could have done this, or if I would have had the same opportunity that person had, then I would be further ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And as once again we focus on and we spend our time and our energy on the uncontrollables, we just stay stagnant. We worry more fear creeps in, and it kind of paralyzes us from our ability to take action.
And it compounds.
It does. From taking accountability, it's really just trying to remove your emotional self from the situation and viewing it from an outsider's perspective and saying, why am I in that position? What decisions have I made that have got me there? Regardless of who my parents are, regardless of the situation I was raised in, regardless whether I came from wealth or the opposite, poverty, or a religious background or not, those are all circumstances. But for growth, for accountability, it all starts with the decisions you're willing to make. And I think one of the things I love the most about where we live in the United States of America is we are free to choose our path. We are free to make decisions that allow us to improve and get better. And I think the most difficult thing is having an honest assessment with yourself and saying, I'm not here because of my circumstances or my environment. I'm where I'm at because of my choices. And the good news is, if you don't like it, you can make different choices to take you to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's easy to look at other people and assess their situation and give them advice. And it's a lot harder to do that for yourself. So Jordan Peterson, you know who that is. Have you ever read his book, The 12 Rules for Life?
I have.
So one of the rules talks about, I don't know exactly how he puts it, but just basically taking a step outside yourself and looking at yourself as a person that you are charged with helping or improving. And I think that's a really good exercise to see where you fall short, but also to come up with ways that you can improve your situation or improve on developing characteristics and qualities that are going to help you, make progress on your goals or just become better in general. So the next one is integrity. So let's talk about how that one became a core value for for your company.
Yeah. I feel like maybe integrity is the root or the foundation of our core values. If I do the things that I say I'm going to do, it changes the complexion of my entire life. Everybody has good intentions. I don't know anybody that wants to be bad. I don't know anybody that wants to be bad at something. I don't know anybody that wants to fail. I don't know anybody that wants to be poor. I don't know anybody that wants to hurt other people. I mean, maybe there's a few, but for generally speaking, most people have good intentions.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty disingenuous to assume that people that you have different viewpoints with have bad intentions. I don't, like you said, I think it's pretty rare for people to actually have bad intentions.
Yeah. But the biggest separator is oftentimes people with the best of intentions don't actually do or follow through with the things they say they're going to do. And
it's the thought that counts, right?
And to me, the foundation of accountability or of integrity is my word is my bond. And even if it's just a thought within myself that I'm going to go do this, and then your alarm goes off and you're like, I'm too tired. I don't feel like it today. You've just made a decision that has put you in a state of complacency and not allowing you to grow, you're letting yourself off the hook and you're not holding yourself accountable. But at the root of that is your personal integrity. It's, do I do the things I say I'm going to do? From a business standpoint, I can't think of a greater characteristic as a consumer than trust in the company that I'm doing business with. So if I'm going to go spend my hard-earned money and give it to someone for what they're offering, I want to be able to trust that I'm going to get what I'm expected to, whether that's service on my vehicle, the quality of the product I'm purchasing, whatever that is. Trust is at the foundation of it. Without personal integrity, without integrity from a business standpoint, we can't develop those relationships of trust. And without that, the other things don't happen. We don't grow.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a big part of that is being true to yourself. It's a lot easier to be held accountable to promises that you make to other people, because if you don't, hold up your end of that promise, they're going to be mad at you. They're going to call you out on it. But it's, you gave the example of, waking up in the morning when you tell yourself that you're going to, no one's going to get mad at you if you decide to sleep in. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, it sounds like integrity and accountability really go hand in hand, especially when it comes to being true to yourself.
Yeah.
What would be some other values that you would consider core values for yourself that aren't necessarily these 4 values that we've talked about?
Yeah. I have a personal mantra that as I kind of plan my day, I write at the top of my planner to remind me of what I feel is important for me to be successful. The first is to be worthy. That can take on a lot of meanings, but from a business perspective, what that means to me is I have to earn my keep. I have to be worthy of the fortune that I have received, and it also takes a very personal and spiritual meaning as well. But to be worthy is kind of the foundation of our good fortune. And the second part is to be humble, to recognize that there's always something to learn. There's always something that I can improve. There's always somebody that can. Not somebody, that everybody has something to offer that I can learn and grow from. But if I'm not humble enough to recognize that, then I miss opportunities to grow. And the last one is to be grateful. I feel like if we're not grateful for what we currently have, it's really difficult to continue to achieve more. And so that's kind of my personal mantra, is to be worthy, to be humble, and to be grateful.
Yeah. Being grateful, I feel like is basically the antidote for what could I say, or how do I say it? It's if you're in a position to where maybe times are hard and you're feeling a little bit down because you're not making progress, whatever facet of life you're trying to improve on, whether it's, at work or at home or, building net worth or whatever it is, it's easy to think, oh, this is dumb, but I mean, just kind of a personal example. So me and my wife, a little over a year ago, were able to buy a house, or
awesome.
build a house and then pay for it when it was done. It was kind of right at the time the interest rates and everything started skyrocketing. When we first started building, we were expecting around this rate, and we ended up being a good amount higher than what we were expecting when we were finally able to lock that in. But it's not as bad as it could have been, and I talk to my wife all the time and say, it's so awesome that we were able to actually get a house, because it's so hard for first-time home buyers in this environment where houses are still stupid expensive and interest rates are higher, 40-year highs or whatever, and so we're just extremely grateful to have what we have. And it's really improved our attitude. Like even if we have to make changes in our life to continue to make our situation work, sacrificing a few things, it makes it a lot easier to come to terms with that when you're grateful for what you have.
Yeah.
I think that brings up another question I'd like to ask you. As far as becoming a successful business owner in the auto industry or in general, what things do you feel like you've had to sacrifice to move forward and hit goals that you have?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest fallacies of success is that it can happen quick. And I know there's some instances where it appears that success came pretty easy for someone. The sacrifices started long before I started working, and I look at my dad and my uncle as third generation owners, and the statistic, I don't know the exact numbers, but the statistic is that the majority of family businesses in its third generation fail. Mostly because the founder of the business had to sacrifice everything to make it work. The second generation witnessed that and followed suit, but the third generation, all they saw was the fruits of the first and second, so they thought it was pretty easy and never quite worked as hard or sacrificed as hard.
Yeah.
And then it tends to fail. Kind of back to our core value of growth and accountability and all of those things. Mm-hmm. My dad and uncle did not take that approach. They sacrificed so much time, energy, finances, and as a young person, I never wanted to get in the car business because I never saw my dad. He worked 80 hours a week until I was 20 years old, actually it was beyond that. But I left on my mission, and I mean, my dad was great at making sure he came to my basketball games or whatever I had, but as far as what his schedule looked like, it was Monday through Saturday from the time the store opened till the time the store closed. And my uncle was the same, and they sacrificed everything. Well, when I got home from my mission, started in the industry, started selling cars, that was no different. He essentially said to me, my dad, he just said, if this is something you really want, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything to make it work. Now, when he's saying sacrifice everything, that obviously does not include sacrificing your integrity or your values,
right,
or your family. But when it comes to things that bring leisure and comfort, that was not part of success early in his career or in mine. Mm-hmm. So, the first 15 years of my career, it was similar to what I described he did. It was being at the dealership, the first one here, and closing the dealership, 5 nights a week. And those 70, 80-hour weeks, in building the business and establishing the way we wanted things to be done, it required an incredible amount of sacrifice. Who I owe the most to is my mom, who raised 10 kids essentially on her own. I mean, that's not saying my dad didn't help, but he just wasn't around, and
that burden fell mostly on her.
Yeah, and to my wife, who raised our 5 kids for many, many years without a lot of support from me, and without a really strong partnership in a spouse, it wouldn't have been possible to accomplish what we did or what we have. And but when it comes to sacrifice, you almost have to be willing to sacrifice at any point of your life when you want to achieve something. If you want to lose weight, you're sacrificing something. But the definition of sacrifice isn't just going without. Mm-hmm. It's actually giving something up for something greater in return. And that's something greater sometimes we forget about. And so we feel like if we look back and we say, man, I sacrificed so much, we kind of mistakenly have the attitude, I missed out on so many things and I gave up so many things. The reality is what you gave up was for the intent of accomplishing something greater. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hope I've accomplished in my family, that my dad did in his family, that my uncle and brother and cousin do the same, is that when the sacrifice has to take place now, it's developing and creating something greater, so that it's not for nothing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Have you ever had any internal struggles, like as far as like you're sacrificing a certain thing, whether it's time with your family or leisurely things? Have you ever had any internal struggles with, like, is what I'm doing worth those sacrifices?
Yeah, I think everyone goes through periods where they question why they're doing what they're doing. And if you don't have a clear vision of what you want for yourself, for your life, for your family, it's really easy to abandon those things as soon as it gets hard or as soon as sacrifice is required. And that's why you see so many people want to be successful, want to make a lot of money, but they're not willing to stick through the hard times because they don't have a real clear picture of what they want to become or what they want to accomplish. It's easy to say, yeah, I want to have a lot of money.
It's really easy to say that.
What is required to get there, or to not understand why they want a lot of money, as soon as sacrifice is required, it's really easy to abandon that and try to go on to something else.
And I think that's a perfect segue to what I want to talk about next is, goal setting and the importance of having a why. So not only having a goal, but why do you want to achieve that goal? And that's something that, management, the dealership is really big on, is you have to have a why. Otherwise, when your motivation, isn't there, when motivation is fleeting, what's going to be the thing that keeps you disciplined? Mm-hmm. And the answer is the why. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd like to have you kind of expound on the importance of a why.
Yeah. I feel like without a why, it's incredibly difficult to accomplish anything that's sustainable. Setting a goal, there's a process to set a goal, and depending on the length of the goal, if it's a goal just for today, I don't want to eat any sugar today, I can probably handle that for one day.
Sure.
But if I truly want to become healthy and eliminate the bad processed sugars from my life, I can't do it just because and be able to stick with it. I have to know why I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And if it's because I want to be healthy, well, why do I want to be healthy? You have to understand the layers and get to the real root of what is driving you to become or to do whatever it is that you've set out to do. And without that why, as soon as something difficult comes along, you cave so fast, and then the progress is slow, and then even more challenging to stay motivated without having that vision or that why of what you're doing. So I don't think I could overemphasize or emphasize enough how critical understanding a why is. The challenge is it's hard sometimes to know what your why is. I went through the first 15 years of my career not really having a why that gave me much direction, other than I wanted to be a hard worker, I wanted to be successful, and I had a great boss and mentor in my dad that was really good at holding me accountable. So that kind of helped with the motivation when I didn't have it for myself.
But you had goals, though, obviously.
I did. All along the way, had a lot of goals. And they were more short-term. They weren't necessarily life-changing, but over time, they helped shape my life, if that makes sense. But it wasn't until I really understood this concept, and a couple books that really helped me, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and really probably the most influential book of my life from a non-religious standpoint is Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And that was written by Napoleon Hill and W. Clement Stone. And really the foundational principle of success is you have to have a purpose. You know, they call it definite major purpose. Simon Sinek calls it a why. But without that clear purpose of why you're doing something, it's difficult to achieve anything that's sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned an example of not eating sugar, being healthy, and I remember we had a meeting where you were talking to us and you kind of gave us an example of some. I don't know if it was I can't remember if it was like a weight loss goal or a fitness goal. And you had some ups and downs with that. What was your why with that?
Yeah, so I'll try to be concise. But when I was 38 years old, I went on a camping trip with the youth in our ward. We hiked down to Havasupai at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. The whole week I felt terrible, lethargic, out of shape. Just physically did not feel great. And I didn't feel sick. I just didn't feel fit and healthy and strong.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. Like, it was a difficult hike in and out and everything, all the activities we did in between. Well, when we got back from that trip, they kind of posted some photos, and one of those photos was of me in a bathing suit standing in front of this waterfall. And when I saw it, I was like, well, that's why you feel crappy, is because you look crappy, so I was 38 years old, and I made a goal at that point in time. My why became, I want to be in the best shape of my life when I'm 40 years old, for a lot of reasons. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to look better. I wanted to have the energy that I believed I should have. I wanted to be able to get back to playing the sports that I loved at a high level. And mostly, I wanted to take the approach that I could accomplish something really difficult. And I played sports all growing up. I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I was always in incredible shape. And to get back to the best shape in my life, at the age of 40 was difficult. And when I started down that path, I went backwards rather than forwards. Like, I tried a lot of different things, tried things that were incredibly difficult. Then I realized I'm not going to get there by myself. I found a nutritionist. The nutritionist helped hold me accountable. I shared with him what my objectives and goals were and why I wanted to do it. And when I started, I felt like, my goal of being, in my mind, of being in the best shape of my life is I really wanted to get under 10% body fat. Mm-hmm. Because of my willingness to be disciplined through that process, all because of my why. I didn't forget that. Like, best shape of my life when I'm 40. And that became so important to me that is what I obsessed about. But that gave me the strength and the discipline to do the really hard things when I wanted to eat dessert, or I didn't want to work out, or whatever came up. But at the end of that, when I turned 40, I have a picture of myself on my 40th birthday, which was in 2020, by the way, and it was the day we had the earthquake here in Utah, and right before the pandemic shut the world down. I have a picture of myself in my home gym, and that week weighed in with my nutritionist at 3% or 3.8% body fat.
That's insane.
So it was incredible, but it was a year and a half. It didn't happen fast. It didn't happen overnight. And there were a lot of times I wanted to quit, and just visibly looking in the mirror, most of the time I could not see the improvement. But then I would go meet with my nutritionist. He would take my measurements and he'd say, hey, you lost 0.3% of body fat. And for that 1 week, that was enough to keep me going for the next week when it didn't feel like anything had changed or anything had happened.
It's amazing how seeing progress and success can be a good motivator for moving on.
Yeah.
You mentioned it was something that you were obsessed with. I think at least something that I struggle with sometimes is like, is the why that I have good enough to move me forward and help me be consistent. And I've thought a lot about that, and how do you measure how strong a why is, and I think getting to the point to where it's an obsession could be a pretty good indicator.
Yeah. I think it's important to also understand that when I say obsessed, I was obsessed with that, but it didn't take over my life.
Right.
I could still function at a very high level at work. It wasn't like I was working out 6 hours a day. I found a way to be successful through a very manageable routine, but it really came down to consistency. Mm-hmm. It really came down to just showing up every single day, putting forth my best effort, and it really didn't take me longer than an hour a day, and then saying no to the treats that I wanted to eat throughout the day.
Right.
And so when I say be obsessed, it was about that one particular thing. It wasn't that it took over my whole life and I abandoned everything else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so to your question, or to your comment about, is your why strong enough? It only has to be strong enough for you. It doesn't matter what anybody else wants. It's all about you, right? My wife didn't want me to be in the best shape of my life. She's 40 and I'm 40. No one's in their best shape of their life. So it wasn't like I was doing it for anybody other than myself.
Right.
And it really wasn't even about the end result. What I gained from it is what I learned and how I grew through the process. And that kind of created a foundation for other areas that I wanted to shift my why to. Once I accomplished that goal, I was able to learn and understand how to maintain a really healthy lifestyle, but I no longer had to be obsessed because that was no longer my why.
Right.
I was able to shift my focus to something else, which, funny enough, moved to golf. I wanted to lower my handicap by 10 strokes. And that's really, really hard. And being obsessed with that doesn't require that I golf 6 hours a day. Mm-hmm. It requires that I'm willing to put in 30 minutes of practice early in the morning at a simulator 5 days a week, not have to change my whole lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. So it kind of sounds like in order to have an effective why, you can't have more than one or too many, otherwise your focus is going to be not focused.
Yeah, I think it depends on the area of your life, because if we shift that to work, I also have a very clear why at work, mm-hmm. That doesn't compete with my why personally, if that makes sense. So I think you can kind of segregate a few areas of your life where you could have a very clear purpose in each area, which might be 3 or 4 or 5, but it's only one per area. You know, yeah. If I want to shave 10 strokes off my handicap and I want to be in the best shape of my life, well, now that is encroaching on work and family and everything else, because that's going to take me 4 hours a day to do that. Mm-hmm. So in each area, I kind of try to just focus on one thing. So one, personally, for like from a health perspective, one spiritually, one for work, and one for family. So that's kind of how I. So I usually have 4 major purposes that I'm working on at a time.
So sales again. So personal, work,
spiritual, and family.
Okay, I think that's really good advice. Otherwise, you're not going to be focused, and you're just going to be hitting your head against the wall trying to do too many things at once. Yeah, spreading yourself too thin, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting ready to wrap up here in just a second. But what would be some, I guess, based off of your life experiences, and I guess you could say things that you've learned building a business. What, I guess, wisdom do you think you would impart to anyone who is able to listen to this or watch this?
I would say that nothing of value comes cheap. And very, very rarely does it come easy. It requires a lot of work. It requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. And when you are willing to engage in those requirements to achieve success, there isn't anything really more fulfilling or satisfying than having accomplished something because you earned it, because you deserve it. Not because it was given to you, not because you got lucky, but because you really put in the effort, you put in the time, you put in the sweat, and that also develops a lot of confidence to be able to continue to repeat it in different areas of your life. But for the person who is seeking for success in whatever way they define it, and they're waiting for it to fall into their lap, it will never happen. It only, from all the people I know, from my own experience, it only comes through work. If there's one thing I could teach my kids, is that if you know how to work, if you're willing to work, and if you're disciplined enough to put in the work, you can accomplish anything that you really want to. If you don't like work, and if you don't want to do it, it's going to be a long, hard life. And life's hard either way. You might as well reap the rewards of choosing for it to be hard,
Right.
rather than just letting it be hard.
Yeah. Acting versus being acted upon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think last question I want to ask you, just kind of something on the lighter side. So, being in the car industry for as long as you've been,
Mm-hmm.
and being the owner of multiple car companies or dealerships,
Mm-hmm.
what is the favorite car that you've been able to drive for an extended period of time?
I think probably my favorite car so far is a Genesis GV80 SUV. Love that car. It's awesome.
It's such a nice car.
Yeah.
It's really funny. So I mentioned, I bought, built and bought a house, and I almost bought a G80, but we got the house instead.
You made a good choice.
In the future,
Cars come and
maybe.
go.
Yeah.
Cars come and go. But your home will bless your family for a long time. So
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
thank you. Great
Anything
opportunity.
else that you want to say before we
Just-
cut it off?
No, my only encouragement for you is to keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.